Everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, family. My name is Paul. I am a recovered addict and a happy member of Cocaine Anonymous. I'm really pleased to have been joined today by Jennifer R.
Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I want you to know that I am in California, which is the morning. So good morning. And I forgot what time it is over there, but you guys know. So it's evening. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased that you've come along to share your message with us. And Jennifer's just celebrated 41 years of continuous sobriety this weekend, wasn't it?
Yes, it was yesterday.
Amazing.
So thank you.
Amazing. My. Now, so here's the deal. I'm going to be putting up readings. I'm going to put information about meetings where you can get yourself to a Cocaine Anonymous meeting on the screen. I'm going to be putting up some readings, and I'm also going to be putting up a chapter from our basic text, a book called Alcoholics Anonymous, often called the Big Book. So there's lots of stuff on the screen. Remember, you can pause and rewind this video at any time. If you want to reach out and get involved in the chat below, wherever you see this video, please do. So there are lots of other broadcasts on this channel. There's over 3 dozen now. There's a broadcast on each of the 12 steps. There's now 2 on step 1 and 2 on step 2. There's one on the spiritual malady, the ABCs of addiction, an entire psychic change. There are about 7 or 8 personal stories. So there's lots and lots of resources here. And indeed, there are hundreds of other Cocaine Anonymous broadcasts on YouTube and elsewhere as well. It's not just our channel. So please reach out if you're struggling with addiction or if you've hit a recovery wall. Please stay connected. You know, we are a family and we are a fellowship outside of the meeting. So please reach out. Please get involved. Now, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to simply hand the floor over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful. Thank you for this. And my name is Jennifer, and I am an extremely grateful cocaine addict. Yes, that's how I say it. It went away for a second. And the reason I say extremely grateful cocaine addict is because it's like a positive affirmation so that it helps me to feel better being a cocaine addict, because it's not the easiest thing to say. It is easier than a lot of the other programs for me, you know, and yesterday was my 41st anniversary birthday. And I was shocked because I got a message from my mother from the grave, and she died when she was 47 years sober. And I wrote a book 32 years ago about cocaine addiction and helping cocaine addicts and their families to recover. And Janine DeBeyer, who was the co-founder of Co-Anon way back when in California, wrote the chapter on the family, okay? And Janine is so special. She was married to Johnny Siegel, and she wrote that chapter. And my mother was in that chapter, my mother's story, and I've never read it. And I read it yesterday, and it blew me away because it gave me, it was definitely a message from my higher power. It gave me a new bottom. It reminded me of what I went through at the end through someone else's eyes. Now, what happened was that I had a very bad incident in San Francisco, and I was living with my boyfriend, who was a cocaine dealer, and we had gotten engaged. And for some reason, he kicked me out. So I went to my best friend, Amy, who's now sober 38 years. We just celebrated her birthday anniversary, who she eventually helped me start Cocaine Anonymous in New York. So I went to her single room occupancy, which is an SRO, you know, and it's like Lenny Bruce used to live there. It was really down and out. So anyhow, I knock on her door. It's probably 2 or 3 in the morning, and she kicks me out. I guess I don't know what I was, but obviously if 2 people kicked me out, I was not in great shape. So I went back to the bar because I had nowhere else to go. And I was talking to this guy at the bar, and he said to me, don't worry, I'll give you a place to stay. And it was right up the street from the bar. And he said, and don't worry, you don't have to worry about anything. I'm not going to attack you or anything. Well, how do you trust a drunk man in a bar? Well, as soon as we got into his place, he started raping me. And I was terrified. And he was kind of brutal. You know, it was violent, I guess is the word. And it was very, I mean, I panicked. And I did a foxhole prayer. And I said, God, help me, get me out of this. And amazingly, the message I got was to tell this guy, wow, I really enjoy this kind of thing. Can you do me a favor? Let me undress myself, and then we'll go back to it. And, you know, kind of like a strip. And he let me get up, and I had already calculated how far the door was away from me and that I had a chance to survive. And I knew how to unlock. I mean, I checked this all out while he was raping me on how to unlock the door and everything like that. So I managed to get out of that room, unlocked the door, and was in the hall, running down the hall, and he was chasing me. And I managed to get out the front door. And I knew if I ran on the sidewalk that I had a less chance because he could grab me and no one would see it, you know, at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. So I ran in the middle of the road on a very busy street in San Francisco, and no one would stop, you know, and he was right behind me. It was really scary. And I'm like, why isn't anybody helping me? Well, that goes back to my mother and what she wrote in the book. So finally, a taxi cab stopped, and he picked me up. And he took me to a battered woman's shelter where I called my mother, and she somehow sent a ticket to me so I could go back to New York. Okay. And I actually flew on the day John Lennon died, which was December 8th, 1980. Okay. So I flew to New York on that day. I had to get some clothes. The taxi driver took me to get clothes, but I didn't want my fiance to get an idea of where I was going. So I only packed summer clothes, like he could think I was going to Hawaii. So I get to the airport in summer clothes, and the the woman at the desk said to me, this is a flight to New York. Why are you wearing shorts? And I said, well, I had to hide the fact of where I was going to my fiance. And she gave me her cashmere coat so that I wouldn't freeze. And that was so wonderful. Later, when I got sober, I tried to get it back to her. I could never find her. I tried everything. So it's an amends I haven't made, but it was like I really tried to make amends along with some other ones. So what I do is I just write to them and tell them why I feel so bad of the wrong I did, and I'm sorry, and I want to make it right. And then the fact that I couldn't send it to her wasn't as important as me voicing what I had done wrong and knowing what I had done wrong. So this is where my mother comes in. The beginning of her story is that whole thing. She didn't know the details, but she said, I knew she'd been in a crisis and I had to send her a ticket. I guess she didn't know I was in a battered woman's shelter or anything like that. And I got to her apartment, and she said she was disheveled. She was dirty. Her clothes were dirty. She reeked of alcohol. And she had a rash with bugs all over her. I'll explain that in a minute. God willing, I'll remember to explain that. And that as hard as it was, she hugged me anyhow. And that she hugged me and took me into her house. Now, mind you, apartment in New York City. I'll go back to the bugs first. I don't know if this happened to anyone else, but to me, I had this phobia that I had bugs all over me. I just thought I had bugs, and I itched and I scratched, and I was like obsessed with it. Well, when I got into detox on January 16th, 1981, which was like probably 5 weeks later, the dermatologist came to see why I had bites all over me. And that was from scratching, it turned out. But he said, you don't have anything. So that was is it psychosis or paranoia or phobia? That's what it's called, the phobia, that I had bugs. So anyhow, I didn't. And so that was, I just learned this yesterday. I mean, I'd forgotten everything until yesterday. And so yesterday, it was really cool to get my mother's view of what had happened. It was like a message from the grave. I felt really good about it. And I felt really good that I had a new bottom that, I didn't remember. And so that was cool. I mean, I remember certain things on that flight that I had Quaaludes and I took those, and, I drank a lot, obviously, but I wasn't an alcoholic. You have to know, she was an alcoholic, not me. So anyhow, this all happened. And I was brought to a new bottom yesterday, okay? Because then she goes on to explain the rest of it, which is like embarrassing. So I won't really bring it up, but it was like the next 5 weeks of what I went through. And all I remember was 2 nights. One was in the bathroom smoking pot out of her vent in the bathroom, so she couldn't smell it. Who knows? She probably did. And I went out one night and I was doing a temp job. And because remember, I've left all my sources in San Francisco, my drug suppliers and everything. And here I am in New York, and I don't know anyone, so I can't get any coke. Well, I would go out and drink. Now I just remembered this, that I would go out and drink, and I was doing a temp job that I had to be at 9 a.m. And I would get to the 11 p.m. mark, where I had to go back to her place to go to sleep so I could get up for the job the next day. And I would remember that mark would go, I can do it until midnight, till 1, till 2, till 3, till 4. And by then I had found people that had cocaine. So I was a pretty sloppy drunk without cocaine. So cocaine really kept me more centered, and I didn't go into blackouts. So I guess what I'm going to do is start at the beginning of my story, because I still have some time. So I was born in a really tiny town in Connecticut. I call it Lily White because it was Lily White. There were no ethnic groups at all. I didn't know they existed. It was 1,000 people in this little tiny town with 2 liquor stores, no gas station, nothing. Oh, it did have a church, a congregational church, and 2 liquor stores. And when I was 8, my dad got transferred to Hong Kong. Now that's a culture shock. I remember when we arrived on a ship, and I've got 3 siblings, and there the 4 of us are. And we are, sorry, I just got a call. I have to, never mind. I always get distracted, so easily distracted. I have ADHD, and it's really hard for me to concentrate. And I found out that Coke helped me to sit and stay. I didn't run around doing a million things. So it was really, it took me about 10 years in sobriety to realize that I was ADHD. And now for my anniversary yesterday, my daughter's now 32. She was 8. I was 8 years sober when I had her. And the reason I waited till 8 years, I don't know, I have a feeling this might be a myth, but I waited because they say all your cells change after 7 years, you'll have all new cells. So I have to look that up on Google. We now have Google. Let me tell you, getting high was hard without getting answers, because we didn't have anything like that. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you wanted to know, I think it was called Desert Island. And there was a little short guy. I forget what we call them now, a small person or a little person. And he would scream, the plane, the plane. Well, we needed to know his name, and we went crazy. So we called
Fantasy Island.
Fantasy Island. Thank you so much. I can't believe you knew it. I had a feeling no one would know it.
Oh, I'm a little older than you think. I remember it well.
Oh, good. So you remember the little guy that would run around and say, the plane, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had to know his name.
They wore
Well,
matching tuxedos, didn't they? They had cream tuxedos.
Yes. Thank you. Very grateful for that tidbit. I don't have to look it up on that one. So the 7-year thing, I'll have to look up later. So anyhow, I didn't have my daughter until I was 8 years sober, thinking maybe she wouldn't be an alcoholic. And she came to celebrate my anniversary with me yesterday. And she's doing studies on ADHD. And she brought me a book on it, which I've read many, but she brought me a book on it because she said by reading it, it really helped her understand why I couldn't sit still to play games with her. You know, if I watch TV, I have to be on the computer. You know, I can't just sit, which I'm doing now. So I'm trying to stay focused, and I asked God to intervene. So what I was saying earlier, we were trying to look up, oh, you told me escape Fantasy Island. Thank you. Yes. So Fantasy Island, we had to know this guy's name. So we called every DJ that we could find that was on the radio at that time. No one knew. And, you know, you go crazy with that stuff. It's there and you can't find the answer, which I'll probably do about the 7-year thing until I finish this. No, I'm sure that'll leave my head. So anyhow, and about the 7-year cell thing, the jury's still out. My daughter, my husband was a cocaine addict. I met him at the first meeting of Cocaine Anonymous in Connecticut. And I had started CA in New York, maybe a year and a half before. So we had a pretty strong fellowship. And the guy that owned a company of shoes that are named after one of the nicknames of cocaine, it used to be very big back in the 80s. He lived in Trump Tower. You guys know what that is now because we all know who Trump is now. So he lived in Trump Tower and he had his offices there. And he had become a member of Cocaine Anonymous. So he brought his limo with me and my friends that had started Cocaine Anonymous. And my sponsor taught me when I was new in the program, there was no CA, I hid my identity in AA because I couldn't say cocaine addict. I had to say alcoholic. And it took me quite a while to realize I was also an alcoholic. And when I went to alcoholism training school, it's an umbrella. All the addictions can fit into it. It's all like basically the same. So anyhow, I'm trying to get back to my daughter. And, you know, a year ago, I had to move back to California. I've been in the jungle of Costa Rica volunteering for 30 years for an organization that she started. Anyhow, it's a kids organization and we save the rainforest. And she started it when she was very young. My husband died of a heart attack at 42 while he was playing with her, and I was sober. And I hope you're okay that I'm going all over the place because, you know, I turned this over and I'm kind of letting God speak. But right now it might appear that God has ADHD because I'm all over the place. And I hope you can follow it. Because a year ago when I moved to California because of my health, and I'm still involved with the organization and everything, my daughter, New Year's Eve, quit drinking. And I guess they have a thing called January dry or dry January. And she's just continued it. And it's over a year. She doesn't drink. She drinks mocktails or whatever, you know, I mean, so that she doesn't feel left out when she's in social situations. Mocktails are like a virgin pina colada kind of thing. So she doesn't feel left out. And I said, do you feel like you're an alcoholic? And she said, no, I just didn't like the way it made me feel. And she's still not drinking. You know, I think it's really cool. Her husband drinks. They have a beautiful bar, you know, but she still doesn't drink. And so I don't know about that 7-year self thing. It might have worked. Okay. And one of the things with my ADHD is that my legs move a lot. And I'm not supposed to make noise, but there's something on the table. I think it's a candle. And my legs are moving and kicking it. And I'm sorry if it's picked up in this. So not knowing where I was, I'm going to go back to my childhood. So we moved to Hong Kong and we were getting off the ship. There were 4 kids and my mother. My father flew ahead. He was an international executive with a company called Singer Sewing Machines. I don't think they're around anymore. But anyhow, so he became the international Asian director or something. He was all over Asia. So he traveled a lot, but we were based in Hong Kong. And getting off the ship, there were all these little boys on sampans. So there's the little boats. And they were saying, buy my dog. They all had dogs. And they said to us 4 kids, all of them, if you don't buy our dog, he's our dinner. And I think it might have been true, but I was 8 years old. I didn't have the power to buy a dog. It was very sad for me because I love animals and I've been working with animals all my life and with wildlife now for all this time. We have a wildlife clinic. We rescue animals and wildlife and babies, baby animals, wildlife. And that's what we do in Costa Rica. And my daughter started it when she was very young. And so it's cool because it's called Kids Saving the Rainforest. She and her best friend wanted to call it the Amazing Arts Art Gallery. And I said, but you're doing something more than that, because they were raising money by selling their things to save the rainforest. They were buying land in Costa Rica so that it was always going to be rainforest. So anyhow, I said, well, think like what you're doing so that the Amazing Arts Art Gallery tells you nothing. And so they said, okay, we'll do it. Girls Saving the Rainforest. I said, try to think more globally, because one day you might accept boys into this club. And they said, no way. So that was a very interesting process that we went through until my daughter went to college. And I was very grateful. I said, if you go to college in the States, I'm going to have to stop the kids camp because it's too much for me. Little kids are draining. And their parents were dropping them off like what's it called? Babysitting club. Because our town, the English speaking part, was very hedonistic and drinking. And when I started meetings there, all I got was this from people. People were so upset. I remember going into George's Bar and Grill and saying, George, can you hang this flyer? I'm starting meetings. And he said, what? You want me to hang a flyer so that you can steal my customers? He said, no way. And that happened wherever I went to try to let people know there was a meeting. And just so you know, it took me 1 year before anyone walked through that door. And there were 2 times that, by the way, I had to change it to AA because we were foreigners and no one would come if it said Cocaine Anonymous, because we could be put in jail. And that's a scary thing in a third world country. So it was AA. So, anyhow, twice during this year, I said, God, I'm not going to make it. And I was sitting in the meeting room where I sat every Wednesday morning for the first meeting at 10 o'clock, while my daughter was in preschool. And amazingly, the first meeting, I said, okay, it's getting late, God, it's 1:15. Can you please help me? I need to stay sober. And I said, okay, God, I'm giving you a chance. I am going to open my mail from the P.O. box. And then by the end of reading my mail, I got to have someone or I'm going out. I can't handle it anymore. And cocaine was very cheap there. So I never got to try it, thank God. So anyhow, so I am opening my mail, and I had forgotten there is part of AA that is called Loners Internationalists. We don't need it as much anymore because we have all these online meetings. So you don't really need to be a loner or an internationalist. But back then, the fax machine had just been invented, answering machines were new too. So it was, we were moving up, but not that far. So I opened up this mail and it's a meeting in print. There are 4,500 sponsors and 500 loner internationalists. And it's the letters of everybody that are written. And then you get pen pals. I got pen pals, lots of them, from people that sponsor. And they would say, I just got back from my meeting. And how are you tonight? And I wanted to say, F you. I can't get to a meeting. You have no idea what I'm going through. You know, it was the loners I needed to hear from. But anyhow, so I'm sitting in that meeting and I read the preamble, which is part of, it's like a 5 or 6 page newsletter that you open up. And so I said the preamble, I read all the shares, and at the end, you say the serenity prayer. So if anyone doesn't think there are miracles in this world, or that God doesn't answer prayers, I got the biggest meeting I'd ever been to in my life, 5,000 people, you know, and it was so cool. And I have to say that the San Diego convention, you know, the international, whatever year that was, maybe 95, anyhow, I went to that, and I went to the Loners Internationalist meeting, and we all had to line up. So we were all lined up, and I got the mic and I shared. And after I shared, I had a pen pal in Fiji, you know, and nobody ever came to his meetings. He was all alone. And it was great because he understood me. So I finished my share. This guy gets up after me and he said, oh my God, I'm Jennifer's pen pal in Fiji. And there we were next to each other in the international convention. And it's just like goes to show the miracles that can happen. And I got another one. Oh, and I also got a picture of us all in the stadium, because I think there were 50, 55,000 then, whatever it was. And I brought it back and I framed it. I had a little restaurant and I framed it in the restaurant by the coffee pot, because by now I had people in the meetings, but very few. And they couldn't really understand it. And I said, that's how big AA is. Okay. You know, so that was like a cool thing for me it's not just me, you know, and in that internationalist loners meeting, they called me a candle in the jungle, you know, and I didn't give up. So another time I'm going to get high. And I said, God, this is it. I'm still in the meeting. Another time, you know, like maybe 4 months later. And I hear this voice and it said, whoever said it, you need 2 people in a meeting. It just takes 2 to have a meeting. Guess what? You're here and I'm here. And I went, wow, that's an 11-step meeting. And I opened up with the preamble. And then I talked to God for half an hour. And then I listened. I meditated. It's through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. And that was another meeting. And then I said the serenity prayer at the end. And that goes to show that no matter what, I keep coming back, even if my ass falls off, you know, because being there for a year in the jungle with no contact with anyone outside, you know, because there were no phones where I lived. There were 2 payphones. And one was at the beach and one was in town, a little tiny town of 10,000 people, and they were rotary dial. So it was very rustic back then. You know, we had 2 buses a day. It was just, so I would fly with my daughter to meetings, to get to meetings. I remember she flew in her bathing suit once. They didn't care. You know, it was really jungly. And, you know, to Zancudo, which means mosquito in English. And there was a couple, Sue and Andrew, that had meetings in Zancudo. And I flew down and, you know, I had to do 2 overnights in order to get to the meeting. Zancudo means mosquito. And my daughter and I were bitten so badly by mosquitoes. And their meeting was outside. And they never got people to their meeting either. And so I was in their meeting and, you know, my daughter's with me, of course, she's young. I think she was 4. I'm not good with that stuff. So I think she might have been 4. And we moved to Costa Rica a year after my husband died, after we went to therapy for it, because I took a leap of faith. It was a spiritual leap of faith. And, I had no idea why. And it's so cool now because we have at least 10 meetings a week in English in Manuel Antonio. And she started Kids Saving the Rainforest, which is really big now. And so that was the leap of faith I took. I didn't know it then, but anyhow. So I should get back to the story, but that is part of my story, not a very happy part. Neither was when my husband died. That was a really hard part to go through. We got married in Fiji at sunset on Valentine's Day, that kind of thing. We had the storybook romance. And to lose him like that, my daughter brought videos yesterday with her that her husband got out of the little tiny videos. He was able to transcribe them somehow. And so yesterday we watched an hour of her as a young kid and him and me and all our friends in the program, and that are still friends of mine today. There's a couple that moved to Denmark because of my husband's death. And I had an hour conversation with them last week, and the other people that are in all the pictures, one we co-sponsor, Lauren, and all the other people are still part of my life. And that goes to show what this program does, lasting friendships. And when there's a fight, we don't give up and throw the person out. We go through the fight and we discuss it and we get through. And there's little bumps in the road. And I'm very grateful to have learned that in this program. So there was one last, I wanted to say, so my daughter, I got her in her bathing suit on the chicken bus. Now, mind you, that's like the local bus that all the people carrying chickens and their supplies take. So it stopped everywhere. So it was a 4-hour bus trip to where we were going. And guys would be standing next to us because it started in our town. So we got the last seats and they smelled so bad. And there was nothing we could do. Windows were open, but it was hot, oppressive, 90-degree humidity. It was crazy, which means 90% humidity. So it was really bad. So anyhow, we got to this meeting finally. And the guy's name was Fred from Canada. And I sat down with him and my daughter. And he said, you're the first person that's ever showed up at my meeting. He said, why don't we just chat? And I looked at him with insanity in my eyes. And I said, say the effing preamble. I did not travel 4 hours to chat. I could chat anywhere with all the drunks in Manuel Antonio. So anyhow, it was like a relief that he saw it in my eyes. And that was the other stuff that my mother had in the book, that I was insane. The cab driver that she paid for, that's another long story. But anyhow, I was in a fight with the mafia and the boys, the guys that that had the cocaine business, right at my bottom. That was my bottom. And it was amazing because I didn't think I was insane. I didn't think anything was wrong. But my friend kicked me out, my boyfriend, a fiance, who they later got hooked up and stayed together. But she's not anymore. She's sober. She's 38 years. And we got through that. I said, I really didn't appreciate you stealing my fiance. She said, you were sober. We weren't going to hang with you anymore. And she didn't. Took her 3 years. But anyhow, I got her into the program. 90 days. She was at a really bad bottom in Bellevue Hospital under a fake name. And someone told me. And I got to her room in the hospital and walked through the door. And she said, how did you find me with that F word in front? She said, God damn it. And for all these years, I thought she was really mad that I had found her. And she told me last week, no, I was just embarrassed. You're sober and here I am dying. And she was dying. She had Guillain-Barré, and oh wow, I'm almost done. So let me move on, because I did get sober. Oh yeah, I'm talking about sobriety. So anyhow, so she had Guillain-Barré, and in the meeting I spoke at yesterday, a guy's girlfriend was in the hospital with that. I didn't even mention the disease. And he said, my girlfriend's paralyzed with Guillain-Barré. But anyhow, so 90 days she couldn't walk. I had her in a wheelchair. You know, she was in her bed until I came to take her around. We had a really fun time. No one seems to think this is so great, but we did. We found the morgue, and I would wheel her around down there. And it was like we didn't want to get caught when we were dealing drugs. We didn't want to get caught. And it was like sneaking and then trying to get in to go see the bodies. We never got caught down there. But we never got into the rooms because they lock them when they're not in there. So anyhow, but we did go to what I call Saturday Night Live, which is the emergency room. And if anybody knows Bellevue Hospital in New York, it's where all the crazies go. Okay. So here we are, Saturday night, knife wounds, bullet wounds, battered women. I mean, it was action. ER had nothing on this, you know, it was crazy and it was fun. I mean, today I would never, well, I mean, it wasn't really fun because they were hurt, but anyhow, it was still fun. Sorry, I got to change that story so that people don't think I'm cruel. Okay, so going back to God knows where I am. So in Hong Kong, I'll just keep going back to my story when I get this. And I'm trying to look at the clock to make sure I don't go too far. I have a clock on my computer. Now I won't go too far. Okay. I hope nobody minds my random out loud thoughts because they just come. And maybe they're God's will because I asked God to do the meeting. You know, maybe someone else has this stuff. So anyhow, so we get to Hong Kong. And I don't know if you guys know about this, but in Hong Kong, it was a British Crown colony. So I went to British school, which was better than the American school system. Because when I moved from there with the British, you know, for 3 years and we moved to Madrid to an American school, and they skipped a grade for me because I was so much smarter than the other people. And it was just that I'd learned so much more. So I never went to, well, you guys have a different system and I can't remember, but anyhow, it was my 7th year of school. Okay, it's called 7th grade in the States. So I went to 7th grade. I never did 6th grade. So that was cool because that was when I started drinking. But anyhow, going back to Hong Kong, just to fill you in, and this is my will, because I think this is a very untalked in the program. It's out now, you know, and what are we called? Me Too movement. Anyhow, so our chauffeur, 2 minutes. Okay. So oh God, I haven't really done my whole story. So I think I was sexually abused. Maybe I wasn't supposed to tell you that, by my brother and my chauffeur. And okay. And this is coming out, and my chauffeur, our chauffeur would drive our parents to a party. So he knew he could do it. All the servants lived in the apartment, and everybody was afraid to say anything to my parents. Anyhow, so that was like not talked about. And I am very grateful, you know, to stay alive. I mean, to stay sober for 41 years, you have to stay sober and don't die. And I'm doing that a little more successfully now. You know, for the first year I was in California, I was really sick, but I passed that the other day. So now I'm on the road to recovery and maybe might even get back to Costa Rica. I don't know. It's all in God's hands. And I just follow his will wherever I go. And I always ask for his will. Like, would I have ever moved to Costa Rica not knowing a soul? Never, you know, and anyhow, I guess that's it. And I want to say thank you. And I really hope that I carried a message of some sort, because I don't know if I was able to. And I've learned how to do a podcast. So I hope that I can do this better since the last time.
It's totally fine. Great message as always. And if anything else comes back to you, you know, we're going to be having a brief discourse now for 20 minutes or so. So you've plenty of time to to gather your thoughts. We'll just bounce off each other for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. So I just want to give a warm welcome to anyone that's struggling with drug addiction and is unsure what Cocaine Anonymous is. We are a fellowship of men and women that have found a way out of active addiction. We meet regularly to carry a message of hope, faith, and courage that you too can lose the desire to use drugs and find a new way to live. That's it. There's nothing to sign, no promises to make. We're not a cult. You never have to come back to another meeting again. But in my experience, most people do, because they realize that we are just ordinary folk that have found a way out and have found a new way to live. The 12 steps afford us a way out of active addiction and a way back into normal living. Many of us come for our drinking, but we stay for our thinking. And it's very important to note that alcoholism and addiction are exactly the same thing. An alcoholic, a full-blown daily alcoholic and a full-blown daily heroin addict, the effects on their minds and bodies and families and circumstance of finances are usually very, very, very similar, and so it doesn't matter. When we come in, we don't know a lot about, we don't know what we don't know. We're very confused about addiction and recovery. We don't understand. We have an obsession of the mind. We don't understand about the mental blank spot, where we are unable to recognize the consequences of our lifestyle and we just carry on using. We don't realize that when we take that first drug, the obsession to keep using, it goes on. That one wants another one, and that one wants another two, and that one wants another two. And we just live to use and use to live. Ways and means to get more. Our whole life and thinking was centered in drugs. So if you're listening to this broadcast and you want to get free, we have a way out and we know how it works. So come along to a Cocaine Anonymous meeting and hear the message of hope, faith, and courage. Now, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. What I find amazing is, the length of sobriety. I mean, you and I have been privileged to know many people over this period of time that have got free. Not that I've been sober that long, don't misunderstand me, but over a period of years, you get to see people, don't you, Jennifer? And you get to see many miracles,
Yes.
and it's just such a privilege. And, I'm quite sure that many of our listeners will be fascinated that you was there, involved in the early mid-80s, and indeed your name's still there in the history of C.A. as being on the board way back in the early to mid-80s. I put it up on screen last time you was here doing a podcast, and I've said it to you before, you're like Cocaine Anonymous royalty to me. It's like, what? You was there in the 80s in C.A.? That is amazing, Jennifer. Not perhaps to you, but to our listeners on this channel, they will find that amazing. So might I just ask, just hand the floor back to you for a couple of minutes. What was the meetings like in those early days? Where you was instrumental and largely responsible for the formation of Cocaine Anonymous in New York. What were the meetings like in those days?
Well, it's pretty crazy. And what I wanted to share real quick is that Amy, that I 12-stepped for 3 months, 90 days, and I finally hooked her. I said, AA's got great looking guys. And I took her to the first meeting and she said, you lied. They don't have great looking guys. That is how we started Cocaine Anonymous in New York. Okay. Was because we wanted to find the people like us. And I was 25. I was 28 by then. So anyhow, and I was going to school to be a substance abuse counselor. And they asked me to be a cocaine counselor because I was the first one. I got sober before cocaine was addictive. So it was really humbling having to be addicted to a drug that wasn't addictive. The mob and the boys, they thought I'd been shot. The boys were so grateful I didn't say what hospital I was in. And they thought it was so that the mob wouldn't target them if they came to visit me. And it's so funny because I was just so embarrassed that I was addicted to cocaine. So anyhow, going back to starting Cocaine Anonymous. So I didn't want to lose Amy. And I was going to school to be an alcoholism counselor. And my thesis was treating the cocaine addict. Okay. So what better than to create a program for the cocaine addict? And I didn't know it existed. I just started like doing Cocaine Anonymous like AA. Okay. And we had it in this guy's apartment. Okay. And as a matter of fact, he and Amy, after a meeting one night, went out and had a drink. That's how wild it was back then. And people started coming into his apartment and they would be dealing cocaine in the bathroom. Another guy came in and he had 2 ounces in his safe deposit box. Okay. So I had the most time. Everybody else was brand new. I had the most time. And I said, I'll keep it for you. I knew I was going to get high. I knew, but it was like the disease talked immediately, like I could do it. Thank God he got rid of it a different way because I wouldn't be here today. So anyhow, it was the wild, wild west with the Cocaine Anonymous meetings. So I went all over New York City where they had AA meetings, and I knocked on everyone's door to start, if they would help us start a Cocaine Anonymous meeting in their building. I mean, in their church or whatever. And, like most people, that were in recovery that worked at these centers, like treatment centers, would say to me, what, you got to start Vodkas Anonymous next? Why do you need Cocaine Anonymous? And I'm very sensitive, and it was really hard for me. Finally, I think it was November 27th, the week of Thanksgiving. I went back to a church. He had checked with, the board, and he said, yeah, you can start on Wednesday. And that was the day we officially started. And it just started growing from there like crazy, and that was where I learned how to, like in the early meetings of the church, we would do a monthly business meeting. I don't know what you call them in the UK, but anyhow, we would do a monthly business meeting, and people would raise their hands, people that are still sober, and say, you need to do this, this, and this. And I learned very early on, wow, that's a great idea. You're in charge, and I'm telling you, it was the way to get the meetings to like, just go like easy, like just put it back on whoever was asking about it. And, we're alive today and doing very well. They were hybrid for a while. That was great, but I can't go to them anymore. But anyhow, I'm sorry, I'm talking too long about this. Oh, I wanted to say that I was on the first board of trustees. You're right, reminded me. And I was the first woman. And I was also in the first book of Hope, Faith, and Courage. And I was in I'm near San Francisco, and I went into a Cocaine Anonymous meeting, and they were telling my story in that book. They read a story each week, and last month, this has nothing to do with CA, but if anybody's ever heard of The Grapevine, it's the AA publication, they accepted my article and it was in last month. So I was glad about that.
That's amazing. Yes. Goodness. I mean, over here in Britain, as you know, Cocaine Anonymous has flourished in recent years. And yes, over here, it's known for a bright, progressive fellowship where we ideally get folks through the 12 steps in, 3 to 5 weeks, I would say on average. Wow. We believe in transparency, accountability, and commitment, and being in the solution, carrying the message, getting into service and sponsorship, come immediately after step work. So that's the kind of features that mark modern British CA. What was it like, sort of like in the mid and towards the end of the 80s how established was it at that time? Would you say it was more in the 90s that it took off, or did it grow exponentially in the 80s?
It grew exponentially in the 80s because I found out that California had started Cocaine Anonymous. So I called the office and I spoke to the co-founder, Ray Grossa, who just passed. And he told me all the ways to start a Cocaine Anonymous meeting and how to do it. And I'd had 3 years in AA, so I understood all that. But Cocaine Anonymous started at the very beginning of being pretty tight and really working hard following the AA. So we as a board, because I went to the general service office every Friday for an AA meeting, nobody knew about it, but GSO is our WSO. We're World Service Office, but they are general service. So I went there every Friday for an AA meeting. So they all knew me. So I went to them to ask if we could use the 12-step, you know what we read, how it works and everything. And they said, whatever we say at the bottom, they said, absolutely, you can do that. If you say reprinted in permission by AA or whatever, I don't know. I think it's where I forgot. But anyhow, that's what they told us we could do. And 3 of us got to go to their board meeting, their quarterly board meeting, to see how AA did it. And they had never invited another 12-step program into it. And it was really cool. Yeah. And we were the only ones that had ever asked permission. So that was really... Was it quite common then in the late 80s to use the 12 and 12 as well as the big book, or was it mainly the big book? Very interesting, because that's what I was going to say originally, and I didn't. We used the 12 and 12. Okay, that was how we did it. Okay, and now I know it's more the big book, right? Well, I use both, but I'm a big proponent of the 12 and 12. So by the time I've been privileged to take someone through the 12 steps, we've gone through the big book, and they'll have read each step out of the 12 and 12 as well as we've been going through, and they'll have checked out each of the podcasts on each of the steps, and they'll have answered questions for 1, 2, and 3. So it's a very thorough process, because this is a life or death errand. It's easy for me and you, stable with some time in, but you and me know that people come in full of chaos, carnage, deceitful, unreliable. Getting that personality change, that emotional rearrangement, getting people to God and quick time, it's not always easy, the solution is in the literature and the steps. So, that's one of the things that, as I say, modern British CA is known for. The emphasis on the literature and the steps, and and quickly followed by service and sponsorship after getting through the 12 steps. So we're coming up to the last sort of few minutes now, but we'll get a chance to have a couple of minutes each. So I mean, I would love to respond to that. Sorry. Okay, it's amazing what you do. You have done what AA did in the beginning. You take them through right away, and it's great, absolutely wonderful to do that. And I am blessed. I got a new sponsor this last week. She's got 51 years of sobriety. Her name is Shelley, and she knows the steps, but she still uses 12 and 12, and she knows them inside and out. And she taught me something on page 72 in the 12 and 12. In the 7th step, it explains exactly what humility is. We don't have to have debates on it anymore. Bill wrote it, and it's right there. And I'm just so in awe that there was this nugget in the 12 and 12 that I've never seen. And you trade out humility wherever you see that. And I will send it to you via WhatsApp. Thank you for letting me share that. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So have you got your coin with you to show our viewers? Oh my goodness, it was on my table. Oh, here it is. Phew. I forgot where it is. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. Oh, let's have a look. Amazing. Oh, and they've even got the masks on. Goodness. Yes, remarkable. Cool? Yeah, just move it back. Just move it back. There it is. Goodness, 41 years recovery. Amazing. And that's Bill and Bob. Yep. Amazing. My man, what's on the back? Is there anything on the back? I haven't looked. This is an AA one. That's okay. But Frank is sending me my CA one, but it's late. Okay. No, it's fine. Really. It's totally fine. I can't read it. It's a lot of words. So what would you say
what do you think happened as regards, because there was quite a change when Hope, Faith and Courage 1 and 2 came out, and wasn't you in both editions or something?
No, I'm in the first one.
The first one,
And
but it was
there's
reprinted, wasn't it?
yes,
That's
because
it. That's
in the
it.
first one I was on page 69, which drove me crazy, you know, but then it switched to 62 in the next edition.
And that's rule 62, which is don't take yourself too seriously.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Now it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I love the old I mean, you know, and you know, one day at a time, you know, this too shall pass. Easy
Yes.
does it, but do it. These are vital things. And many a newcomer says, oh, I don't like those, but after a period of time they say, I quite like the slogans now. You know, it's a little bit like, oh, I don't give me any of this God business, but give them 2 or 3 months. I think it's God. Yes, we know, we've been telling you that.
Totally.
And I mean, you know, just in terms of the literature, I mean, it fascinates me that, you know, as I thought, the 12 and 12 was widely used in the 80s. Would that be
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yes.
and that, you know, and I think a lot of people aren't necessarily clear on these things. And you know, we are coming to the last of a couple of minutes now, but it's just been a pleasure and a privilege, as always, to share fellowship with you. And you know, on behalf of, you know, as a member of CA in Britain, I just want to thank you, because this is your 4th podcast on this channel. You've got 1 on the history and growth of Cocaine Anonymous. You've got 2 on your personal stories, and then you've come for your birthday share on your 41-year anniversary today to share with us, to our listeners. So, you know, thank you so much. You know, and it's crystal clear. Your message, your heart, your love, your passion for the fellowship is crystal clear across 3,000 miles of the Atlantic. You know. So is there anything you'd like to share with us for this last couple of minutes with our listeners?
No, but you know, for the people, I love the way you work the program there, because it insists on getting them doing everything right away. And for the people that have ever thought of going back out, I wanted to go back out when my husband died because I couldn't handle the pain. And he and I were in a home group at noon. And I went in with my baby, you know, and she was 3. She wasn't a baby, but anyhow, she was 3. And I went into that noon meeting and I said, I can't stay sober today. You know, I've been through this a lot. And an old timer looked at me and said, okay, think it through. If you pick up, you're her only parent. What's she going to do? You know, you look at what will happen, keeping it green. And I think that's really important, to think it through, you know, keep it green. I think that's still a slogan. So anyhow, yes, thank you.
Absolutely. And, you know, the other thing that we emphasize quite strongly is you've got to work the fellowship, work the program, but work the fellowship, which means outside of meetings. We are a family. You know, I'm part of a group called We Can Recover, and we meet twice a day, every day, 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. UK time, which is 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. New York time, every single day. You know, we have about 400 people through the doors every week. You know, it was just 20,000 folk through the doors last year.
Wow.
You know, yeah. And it's a powerful meeting, a vibrant meeting that carries a clear message of hope, faith, courage twice a day, every day. But here's the thing. We've got about 5 sponsorships. This is just one meeting. You understand me? This is just one group in Britain. We've got about 4 or 5 sponsorship families that are part of our group. We've got active current lists of male and female sponsors with more than a dozen on each. And we are a family. We also have a WhatsApp group with, you know, over 1,500 folk on there. And there is various WhatsApp groups. So CA is flourishing. There's this channel and there's many other CA broadcasts on YouTube and elsewhere. But we are a family outside of the meetings. You know, many people in our group, you know, will spend, you know, hours every day reaching out outside of meetings to each other, you know, and so the social networking aspect of the fellowship goes on very much outside of the meetings, and that is the key, isn't it? You know, a support group, a family, the broader your foundation, the higher the point of freedom, you know. And well, it's
Totally.
ultimately down to that connection with God, isn't it? You know.
Yes. Yes. I tell you, the fellowship is so important. And I'm glad we can do it virtually now, you know, because I was going to start a retirement home for 12-step people so that we could all go to meetings there. And we don't need it anymore. We've got this.
Yeah, you bet. Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure sharing time with you once more. And, you know, thanks again for sharing with us, you know, your message. And yeah, and to our listeners, please stay connected. Check out the other recordings on the channel. Get yourself along to a meeting. You can read or listen to the big book or the 12 and 12 completely free 24/7 at aa.org. So please stay connected, family, and stay safe. Thanks so much, Jennifer.
Thank you. Amazing. I'm so proud of what you're doing. It's awesome.
Shall we say the Serenity Prayer together?
Yeah, the we version, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
You start.
3, 2, 1. God,
God,
grant us the serenity
to
to accept the things we cannot
cannot
change,
change,
the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom
to know the difference.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
so
you. That was wonderful. I'm sorry I was all over the place. I didn't know what happened.
Okay.
It came out okay?
It's fine. We're still, yeah. Okay, family, thanks so much for tuning in. And thank you so much once again, Jennifer. Until next time, folks.